Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's not every day that you walk into a summit venue and find yourself being greeted by a robot. But welcome to Tianjin, where the future is on full display. Humanoid machines, cutting-edge gadgets and technology everywhere you look. China is making a point as it hosts this year's SCO summit. But why in Tianjin? We will discuss that tonight. And before Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives here, he made a stop in Japan. So what did the first leg of his tour look like? And why is his next stop, China, so crucial? After all, this is Prime Minister Modi's first visit to China in 7 years. And many are asking what triggered the thaw. Was it a secret letter from President Xi Jinping? We'll discuss that too. Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump's tariff rants roll on. Another White House advisor is warning India, if you don't budge, neither will Trump. In Ukraine, the war is only escalating. Russian strikes have killed 23 people and Moscow's naval drones have taken down a Ukrainian ship. What happened to the peace efforts? In Mexico, a brawl breaks out inside the Senate. And in Kenya, a tourist is under fire for feeding alcohol to an elephant. All that and more coming up. The headlines first. India's economy grew at 7.8% in the April to June quarter, beating expectations. Higher government spending, growth in the manufacturing sector and improved consumer sentiment led to the strong performance. This cements India's position as the fastest growing major economy as it navigates through steep US tariffs. Donald Trump withdraws Kamala Harris's Secret Service security protection. The Trump administration ended an extension for the former vice president, which was approved by then-President Joe Biden. Only former US presidents receive Secret Service protection for life. Thailand's Constitutional Court sacks Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra over her handling of the country's border row with Cambodia. Last month, she was suspended from office. The court's decision has thrown the kingdom into political turmoil with no obvious candidate in sight to lead the fragile ruling coalition. Israel declares Gaza City a dangerous combat zone ahead of an offensive to take over the Palestinian territory's largest city. Nearly 1 million people currently live in Gaza City and its surroundings. Israel is under pressure, both at home and abroad, to end its military campaign in Gaza. And Turkey sets a year-end goal for a peace process with the Kurdish militant group PKK. In the month of May, the Kurdistan Workers' Party had announced the end of its insurgency, which spanned decades and claimed more than 50,000 lives. It's not every day that Tokyo's skyline glows saffron, white and green. But it did today. The Tokyo sky tree lit up in the colors of the Indian flag. Because Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Japan for the first bilateral visit in almost 7 years, which makes it a very special one. This is the first leg of Prime Minister Modi's two-nation tour. Tomorrow he will land in China's Tianjin for the SCO, or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. And that's where we are right now, in Tianjin, because Tianjin is the big headliner of this trip. But it's Tokyo that has set the stage. You know a Modi visit abroad by its sound. In Tokyo, the Gayatri Mantra echoed through hotel lobbies along with folk songs from India. Members of the Indian diaspora turned up with tricolour scarves and dhols. Japan has a small but deeply rooted Indian community, and they showed up to greet the Prime Minister. So it was colourful and vibrant. But let's not forget the context of this visit. Modi arrives in Japan just as India's relationship with Washington hits a sour note. Donald Trump's 50% tariffs have kicked in, so Tokyo smelled opportunity. Hours before Modi's plane touched down, Japan's top trade negotiator abruptly cancelled a trip to the US. Coincidence? Perhaps. But every move matters in diplomacy, and the symbolism here was loud and clear. Which brings us to the headlines. Prime Minister Modi started the morning at the India-Japan Economic Forum. Here he pointed to India's upgraded credit rating. He said, the world is not just watching India, but counting on it. He called on business leaders to make in India and make for the world.
साथ मिलकर हम ग्लोबल साउथ, विशेषकर अफ्रीका के विकास में अहम योगदान दे सकते हैं। मैं आप सबसे आग्रह करता हूं, कम मेक इन इंडिया, मेक फॉर द वर्ल्ड.
After that, he met Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. The two leaders spoke of democracy, global stability, and the Indo-Pacific order. The Indian Prime Minister summed it up in one sentence. He said, India and Japan will shape the Asian century.
India and Japan partnership is rooted in mutual trust, reflects our national priorities, and is shaped by our shared values and beliefs. Together, we carry a common dream of peace, progress, and prosperity of our peoples and for the world.
Japan is set to invest 10 trillion yen in India over the next decade. 10 trillion yen is around $68 billion. And what does that mean in practice? It means infrastructure, green energy, digital partnerships, and a flood of Japanese capital into Indian startups. And this is where things get futuristic. Modi and Ishiba announced a bouquet of high-tech deals. The first is a digital partnership, a joint effort for artificial intelligence and digital public infrastructure. Then there's a tie-up for Chandrayaan-5. ISRO and Japan's space agency are partnering for a lunar polar mission. Third is semiconductors and rare earth minerals. Because in today's world, chips are power and supply chains are sovereignty. For Japan, which has the tech but lacks scale, India is a natural partner. For India, Japan's deep science muscle is a golden ticket. And while trade deals may dominate headlines, the most ambitious target was human. A plan for 500,000 people-to-people exchanges between India and Japan. That includes 50,000 Indian workers in Japan's aging economy, Indian students studying in Japan, and cultural partnerships that take this to the next level. So here's the takeaway. Modi's Japan stopover is not just about bilateral deals, it's about repositioning India amid a turbulent world order. With Washington becoming more unreliable, Tokyo becomes a steadier anchor. The next decade of India-Japan ties is already sketched out in the 10-year joint vision. And this does not end there. From Tokyo, Prime Minister Modi will fly to China, like I said, for the SCO summit. And that too will be his first visit in 7 years, the first to China in 7 years, and we'll be tracking it here for you. In 48 hours, the SCO summit will kick off in Tianjin. And some of you may be wondering, why is China hosting this summit here? After all, Beijing is the capital of China, and Shanghai is where the SCO was born. So why pick Tianjin for this summit? Well, the answer lies in history. This city was once divided into foreign concessions. Parts of Tianjin were controlled by other countries. China had no authority there. Today, those same streets are back in Chinese hands. Old colonial houses have Chinese cafes and shops now. And by hosting the summit here, Beijing wants to send a message that a city once occupied by the West is now being used as a stage to challenge the Western-led global order. Why did China pick Tianjin to host this year's SCO summit? For many watching from the outside, Beijing or Shanghai would seem the natural choice. Beijing is the capital of China, while Shanghai is where the SCO was born. As the name says it, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So Tianjin was a surprise pick. But why? The answer lies here in the streets of Tianjin. These are not ordinary homes, they are practically heritage sites. This place is often described as an open museum. Tianjin is the fourth largest city of China and it carries an unusual nickname. It is called the Outdoor Museum, and that's because of what surrounds me. This city is an extraordinary collection of preserved historical architecture, buildings from different countries and different eras all standing together. And where we are right now is called the Five Great Avenues. It is home to more than 2,000 historical buildings. More than 400 of them have been designated as protected historical sites with plaques like this one. It says Great General Protection, Historical and Stylistic Architecture of Tianjin. You'll see this all over the place here. And this is what makes the city so unique. It is a modern city, but it also feels like a living exhibition where each street and each district is part of the display. The homes in Tianjin's Five Great Avenues are direct architectural remnants of China's colonial period. They reflect the foreign concession system. This system emerged after China's military defeats in the 19th century. This is what used to be a part of British concession, one of many concessions in Tianjin. According to one claim, there were a total of 9. Each was a designated area not governed by China. It was controlled by a foreign country, like a mini country within China with its own laws, its own police, its own courts, its own administration, and completely outside Chinese control. Each concession brought with it a piece of another country, all planted onto Chinese soil. That is no longer the case today. These buildings are now firmly in Chinese hands. The streets are lined with Chinese shops and cafes. Modern-day Chinese coffee and food chains now operate from colonial buildings. They represent today's China, the world's second largest economy, and a force to reckon with. That is the message that Xi Jinping wants to send as the host of the SCO summit. Tianjin sits on Bohai Bay. It is the maritime gateway to Beijing, a strategic city, also central to the Belt and Road Initiative. Tianjin serves as connection between land corridors and sea trade routes. It plays a growing role in regional trade logistics. Its port is connected with more than 180 countries and regions. Freight trains now link Tianjin directly with Central Asia and Europe. One recent route from Tianjin to Uzbekistan shortened delivery distance by 800 kilometers. This city is strategically important for China's SCO outreach. The SCO represents around 40% of the world's population and 25% of global GDP. So the subtext is clear. It is not just about hosting a summit, it is about sending a message, a shift in balance. From the West's G7 summits in castles and resorts to the Global South's SCO summit in a city once scarred by colonialism. Tianjin was once a gateway for colonizers. Today, Beijing wants it to be the gateway for the Global South. From concessions to connections. From being carved up to carving out a new world order. That's why Tianjin, not Beijing, not Shanghai, but a city that carries the scars of the past and the ambitions of the future. This year's SCO summit is the largest ever. And perhaps more importantly, it is China's first international gathering of this scale since the pandemic. So it wants to put its best foot forward. And the first step to that would be ensuring smooth press coverage. Today we visited the media center of the SCO summit. It is right next to the main summit venue, and it's massive, with rows of buzzing workstations, live press briefings, and then a surprise. Or should I say, AI surprise. Robots. Not just displays, but interactive animated AI-powered machines, some dabbing, some mirroring your movements, and a humanoid AI assistant that makes conversation. Of course, we chatted with it, and no, it was not your usual Q&A. Here's how it went. Tianjin is abuzz because something big is happening here. It is getting ready for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO summit. This is the 5th time that China is hosting the summit. Adjacent to the main venue is the media center, the one-stop destination for the nearly 3,000 journalists huddling in the port city. With everything from workstations and news briefings to photo releases and summit updates. But it's not just about cables and coffee here. At the center of it all stands an exciting interactive surprise, an AI humanoid robot. Hi, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm doing great.
Are you all set for the SCO summit?
Yes. Everything is fully prepared for the SCO summit.
Can you tell me about yourself?
Certainly. I'm Xiaohe, an advanced humanoid AI robot designed for the SCO summit. I specialize in multilingual communication, emotional intelligence. I originate from a robotics facility in Dalian and embody futuristic technology with lifelike appearance and behavior.
This SCO summit is the largest ever. Leaders from 20 nations will gather here, and the world will be watching. What's more, this is perhaps the largest summit to be held in China since the pandemic. It is bound to attract attention, both at home and abroad. And Beijing wants to send a message, with technology being at the core of it. The robotic companions of this media center say it all. They seem straight out of the future. Need some water? There is a robot for it. Love the mimicking game? A robot hand will copy all your gestures. Even the complicated ones. Need some love? There is a robot waiting for you. Need a partner while you dab? Well, you know the answer.
Thanks for asking.
There are robots to make supply chains swifter and to perform tasks you did not even know you needed help with. Like cleaning wires in a forest, for instance. There is a drone for it, nestled in what looks like a futuristic pod. This may look more Robo-Expo and less media center, but it is obvious why such advanced tech has flooded this massive gathering. This is about telling the West that they can try to bully the global South, they can try to patronize, but they won't succeed. This SCO summit signals a shift in balance. Amid these turbulent geopolitical times, it is a showcase of the global South leading the way, leaving the West to play catch-up. Want to know why? Our friend, the humanoid robot, has a pro tip for you.
Watch the coverage of the SCO summit from Tianjin on Firstpost.
So just 2 days left for the SCO summit to begin. The scale of arrangements at the media center shows how much importance China is giving to this event. And for India too, it is a significant engagement, the outcome of a slow but steady reset in ties with Beijing. And this reset has not happened overnight. It's been in the making for months. A new report is out with new details about how this rapprochement began. According to Bloomberg, it was China that made the first move. It began in March this year. The US was tightening tariffs on Chinese goods. In that climate, Beijing quietly reached out to New Delhi. President Xi Jinping sent a personal letter to India's President Draupadi Murmu. The letter spoke of closer ties. It also warned against US deals that could hurt China's interests. And it named an official to guide Beijing's outreach. The message was then relayed to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India approached this with caution. No immediate response was given. But by the month of June, circumstances began changing. The trade negotiations with Washington had soured. Trump had slapped a 50% tariff on Indian exports. And New Delhi was unhappy about his claim of mediating peace between India and Pakistan. Together, these factors pushed India to consider China's outreach more seriously. By August, the momentum had clearly shifted. Both sides agreed to step up border talks, and all of this paved the way for Prime Minister Modi's first visit to China this week. The first one in 7 years, as I've been saying. So New Delhi has proceeded with caution. Discussions from the Indian side were led by senior officials, including National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. He traveled to China twice in the past year. In July, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar visited Beijing. It was his first such trip in 5 years. And India used these meetings to press its concerns. It asked China to avoid restrictive trade measures and to ensure steady supplies of fertilizers and rare earths to India. China gave assurances on both these counts. This opened the door to a series of moves. Both sides appear keen to build on the momentum. There is talk of resuming direct flights between India and China. Beijing has eased curbs on urea shipments to India, and India has restored tourist visas for Chinese nationals. On the business front too, talks have picked up. Indian businesses are discussing new projects with their Chinese counterparts. So far, there are two clear takeaways. First, Trump's tariff policy has backfired. When he raised the tariffs on India, China saw an opportunity and seized it, and India reciprocated. That's point number one, which brings me to point number two. Economics is clearly taking precedence in this relationship now. China's economy is struggling with deflation and industrial overcapacity. Factories face shrinking demand in the West, especially those that produce electric vehicles and solar panels. For them, India's 1.4 billion consumers are an attractive market. And for New Delhi, Chinese capital and technology could support Indian manufacturing. So it's a win-win situation. That does not mean India's other concerns take a backseat. The border remains calm but disputed and unresolved. That's one issue that must be addressed. Plus, China's support for Pakistan remains a core concern for India. These challenges can neither be ignored nor underestimated. At the same time, India has found a middle ground to work with the Chinese side without compromising on security and by selectively opening doors where economic gains are clear. This is engagement on Indian terms. It is pragmatic, measured, and driven by national interest. And the outreach by China is proof that Delhi can engage Beijing without conceding ground and balance deterrence with dialogue. It's a new day and a new rant. That's how the Trump presidency rolls these days. One morning it's China, the next it's India. In fact, lately it's just been India. New Delhi is their latest target. We are the world's largest democracy, Washington's so-called strategic partner. But if you believe White House trade advisor Peter Navarro, we are the Kremlin's favorite oil laundromat. Today's rant started with Kevin Hassett. He is the U.S. National Economic Council director, basically another White House advisor. He said, and I'm quoting, "If Indians don't budge, I don't think President Trump will." But he missed the point here. You see, India did not start this trade war. India did not impose the tariffs. It was all done by the Trump administration. What India did was talk to the US to find a way to work with them. But India also had one condition, that it will do what is best for its people. The problem is, Washington wants a deal on its terms, so it calls India intransigent. Also, it's not just Hassett who is training his guns on India. We also have the usual suspect, White House trade advisor Peter Navarro. He's led the charge in targeting India. His social media feed is filled with fiery accusations. They read more like fiction than trade analysis, but here's how it goes. Before Russia invaded Ukraine, India barely bought Russian oil, less than 1% of imports. Fast forward to today, Russian oil makes up more than 30% of India's imports. That's more than 1.5 million barrels a day. India refines it and sells it abroad, and that is how Putin's war chest is topped up. And India makes a tidy profit in the process. This is Peter Navarro's argument. He calls this an oil money laundromat. But this argument is deeply flawed. Both the White House advisors have missed some important details, so let me once again set the record straight. Number one, Washington itself is chasing energy deals with Russia. Their own president, Donald Trump, met the Russian leader. He rolled out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin, so the Americans cannot target India for engaging with Russia. That's one. Point number two, India started buying Russian oil 3 years ago. It's been more than 1,100 days, and it was Washington that encouraged this purchase because it helped stabilize the global oil markets. Now they cannot turn around and target India for the same thing. Point number three, India may be buying Russian oil, but it's not the biggest buyer. That is China. And by that logic, Navarro should be pushing to sanction China. But he's not doing that. Washington is handing the Chinese one tariff exemption after another. And that tells you all you need to know about American hypocrisy. Guess who is calling it out now? It's the Democrats. These are leaders on the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee. They have accused the Trump administration of sabotaging U.S.-India ties. They say India is being punished harder than anyone else, and that is counterproductive. Because it took decades for India and the U.S. to deepen ties. Over the past few years, India had been moving closer to Washington, and it emerged as a potential partner against China. But Trump's tariffs are flipping that script. What's worse, the Trump administration has torched another pillar of global trade, the de minimis exemption. It has been in place since 1938. And here's what it did. Packages under $800 could slip into America duty-free. There was no tax levied on them. And that helped e-commerce flourish. Brands like Shein, Temu, Etsy, they all shipped to American doorsteps without any duties. But not anymore. Because starting this week, every parcel will be taxed. No matter the size or the cost, it will attract a duty. Shippers can opt to pay a flat duty of anywhere between $80 to $200, depending on the country of origin. The lower rate applies to places with duties below 16%, the likes of the UK and the EU. The top rate applies to countries with tariffs more than 25%, like India and Canada. So even a 20% Amazon knick-knack could now cost you double the price thanks to tariffs and fees. Postal services are already panicking. Some are suspending shipments to the US altogether. For small businesses, it is chaos. For consumers, it is higher costs. But White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro is trying to spin it. He insists that this move will raise revenue and it will also stem the flow of fentanyl into the US. How will it do that? Well, that he hasn't specified. He can write post after post on X about India, but these details are a top secret. Again, it tells you all you need to know about Trump's trade war. India is drifting away from the US. Americans are paying more, small businesses are choking, allies are confused, and adversaries are amused. Trump calls it strength, leverage, America first. But this is not strategy. It's a trade war that leaves everyone worse off. It was supposed to be the start of something different. Just 2 weeks ago, cameras flashed in Alaska. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin shook hands. Peace was the word floating around. Negotiations, summits, ceasefire, everything was discussed. And yet here we are. 2 weeks later, there is no peace. There is not even a pause. Instead, the war has escalated into one of its deadliest phases. Kiev is reeling under its biggest attack in months.
Били БПЛАшками, вон там видно пожар очень.
Что там? Стил, да? Голову держите, голову дура.
Civilians buried in the rubble, the European Union's mission building left scarred, and a Ukrainian ship sunk in the river Danube. So what exactly happened? Why did peace talks collapse into fire and smoke? First, let's start with the latest in the Ukrainian capital. It was a night of fire for Kiev. The capital did not sleep. Overnight, Russia unleashed nearly 600 drones and more than 30 missiles, all in one coordinated attack. 23 people were killed, including 4 children. Dozens more were pulled out of burning apartments. At least 48 people were wounded. The strikes damaged buildings in 33 locations across all 10 districts of the city of Kiev. So this was not just another bombardment. It was one of Russia's largest combined aerial strikes since the war began. Ukraine says it downed most of the drones. 563 of the nearly 500 drones fired. But even then, there was widespread damage. And it was not just Ukrainian buildings. Like I said, there were other structures that suffered too. Like the European Union delegation's building in Kiev, it was damaged. So was the British Council office. And European leaders have called it a deliberate attack, a calculated insult after weeks of peace diplomacy. Earlier today, Brussels summoned the Russian envoy. So did the UK. It summoned the Russian ambassador to London. The European Union called the attacks a deliberate choice to mock peace efforts.
I'm outraged by the attack on Kyiv, also hitting our EU offices. This was the deadliest drone and missile attack on the capital since July. And as you can see behind me on the screen, it was an attack also on our delegation.
Even the White House could not ignore it. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said President Trump was not too happy about this.
I know what the president thinks because I talked to him about this. He was not happy about this news, but he was also not surprised. These are two countries that have been at war for a very long time. Russia launched this attack on Kyiv.
And the violence was not limited to the skies. Russia used naval drones to sink a Ukrainian ship, the Simferopol. It's a reconnaissance ship. It was launched just a few years ago. This was Ukraine's largest naval vessel in a decade, and now Russian sea drones have taken it down. Ukraine has confirmed the attack. One sailor was killed in this assault. Several others were wounded, and many are also missing. So you may ask, what happened to the peace effort? It looks like the Alaska talks fizzled. The politicians shuffled papers and shook hands, but on the ground, nothing changed. And now the bombs are back. For Ukrainians, the very idea of negotiations feels insulting, like a punchline to a bad joke. In fact, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is already calling for tougher sanctions and more weapons. The EU is preparing to impose more penalties. It wants to push through yet another sanctions package. It will be the 19th package since the war began. Meanwhile, Russian attacks continue to escalate, and ordinary Ukrainians are bracing for more nights in bomb shelters. The prospect of peace lasted barely 2 weeks. The headlines have once again gone from diplomacy to destruction. It's a clear sign that this war is not winding down. It is only intensifying. Now, coming back to the SCO summit, like we told you, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is attending it in person. This is his first visit to China in 7 years. He will meet China's Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the summit. For New Delhi, it's a cautious reset, because our relationship with China has been full of twists and turns, thaws and setbacks. The Modi-Xi engagement began in 2014 when the two leaders met in Ahmedabad. They sat on the floor in Sabarmati and spun a charkha, a weaver's wheel. In the years that followed, there have been border clashes and high-profile diplomatic overtures. Tianjin is the latest in the series. Our next report looks at how this relationship has evolved and why India needs to tread carefully.
It begins, as many stories do, with a photograph. India's new Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, sitting cross-legged beside Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Sabarmati ashram. The two men, both just months into their tenures, spin a charkha. A hand-weaving wheel Mahatma Gandhi once used as a symbol of self-reliance. The image is heavy with symbolism. Two powerful Asian leaders, seemingly weaving a new chapter in India-China ties. But if diplomacy were only about photos, the story would have been simple. Instead, what followed was a decade of sharp swings, handshakes 1 year, border standoffs the next. In the first few years, Modi and Xi experimented with something unusual: personal diplomacy. In 2015, when Modi traveled to Lebanon, that is Xi's hometown, it was billed as a gesture of respect. World leaders rarely get such treatment. The two toured Buddhist temples, spoke of cultural ties, and tried to signal that millennia of history might anchor modern geopolitics. The rhetoric was warm, even poetic. Modi said India and China were two bodies with one spirit, and that their relationship must move from inches to miles. But the trouble with metaphors is that reality soon interrupts them. By 2017, relations had entered their first serious storm. Indian and Chinese troops were engaged in a 2-month standoff in the summer. This until both sides agreed to disengage. The Wuhan reset followed in 2018, when Modi and Xi met informally for hours of lakeside walks and tea. It was an acknowledgement that leader-to-leader dialogue had become the only reliable safety valve. Wuhan was remarkable in its casualness. No set agenda, no joint communiqué, just two leaders talking for nearly 10 hours. Out of it came pledges of better military communication and even a joint development project in Afghanistan. A year later, the informal summit in Mamallapuram added more personal touch. Modi welcomed Xi in traditional Tamil attire, reminiscent of ancient Pallava-China trade links. They walked among stone temples, dined for hours, and once again promised to not let differences turn into disputes. But those words were tested soon enough. In June 2020, the Galwan Valley clash in Ladakh changed the relationship in ways that no summit could undo. Indian and Chinese soldiers clashed. For India, Galwan was not just another skirmish. It shattered trust. The very premise that dialogue at the top could stabilize the border looked hollow. Now, more than 7 years after his last trip, Modi is back in China, this time in Tianjin, for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. The mood is different. There will be no riverside dinners or symbolic churkas this time. The relationship carries the weight of Doklam and the shadow of Galwan. The reality of a border that remains tense despite endless rounds of commander-level talks. For New Delhi, the engagement is a cautious reset. India is still wary of Beijing's ties with Pakistan and its growing presence in the Indian Ocean. The arc tells you everything about India-China ties. A relationship always balancing symbolism with suspicion, warmth with wariness. So when PM Modi meets President Xi in Tianjin, it won't be about nostalgia or new poetry. It will be about pragmatism. About keeping doors open, even as the walls grow taller.
And now let's shift our attention to Mexico, where chaos erupted in the Senate after a heated debate turned physical. And it happened right in the middle of the national anthem. Two of the country's top politicians got into a shouting match. This was followed by grabbing, shoving and slapping, not to mention dramatic headlines. It has exposed the deep divisions within Mexican politics and also growing tensions over a spiraling problem. Our next report has more.
As the national anthem was playing, to mark the end of the day's session, Mexico's Senate devolved into violence. As two of the country's top politicians started brawling. Alejandro Moreno, the head of the opposition Institutional Revolutionary Party, or PRI, grabbed at Gerardo Fernandez Noroña, the Senate president from the ruling Morena party. Moreno repeatedly said, "I'm asking you to let me speak," while Noroña responded with, "Don't touch me." When Noroña tried to pull himself away, Moreno grabbed at him again. Soon, both the lawmakers started hitting each other, shouting, shoving, and Moreno even slapped Noroña on the neck. When others tried to intervene, things only got worse. During a press conference after the incident, Noroña said, "Moreno hit me on the arms and said, 'I'm going to beat the out of you. I'm going to kill you.'" He has also filed a criminal complaint against Moreno, who hasn't shown remorse, at least publicly. He wrote on social media, "I will always respond head-on, with character and without fear, to defend Mexico and give it the direction it deserves." Legislative violence is not uncommon. This year has witnessed several flare-ups already. Like in July, when a brawl broke out between lawmakers in Armenia's National Assembly, or in March, when Serbia's parliamentary session erupted into chaos, with flares, smoke grenades, and a physical confrontation. But what's behind the Senate clash in Mexico? Senator Moreno was angry at not having been allowed to speak during the debate. Even before it happened, tempers had been running high throughout the discussion about the presence of foreign armed forces on Mexican soil. Recently, U.S. President Donald Trump reportedly authorized the use of military force to target drug cartels in Latin American countries. And Mexico is a huge part of this. Extreme cartel violence has surged across the country in recent years. Drug trafficking and smuggling, which generate billions of dollars a year for the gangs, fuel the violence. Kidnappings, disappearances, and murders across Mexico leave more than 30,000 people dead each year. Earlier this month, several severed heads were found on a road in central Mexico, an area where cartel violence is not prominent. In June, the bodies of 20 people, 4 of them decapitated, were found in Sinaloa. This state is gripped by gang violence. In May, 7 youths were killed in a shooting at a Catholic church festivity, also in central Mexico. the government has tried and failed to get a grip on the gang violence. And after Trump's involvement, the issue has become particularly contentious. Earlier this week, a senator from the opposition National Action Party, or PN, said that help from the United States to fight the cartels in Mexico is absolutely welcome. During the Senate debate, the governing Morena party accused the opposition parties of calling for U.S. military intervention in Mexico. Both parties rejected the claim, but a tense debate followed, leading to the scuffle. As the dust settles in Mexico's Senate, the images of lawmakers trading blows are hard to ignore. But what's even harder to forget is the stark display of political instability. So amid growing cartel violence and Trump pushing to step in, as politicians fight among themselves, many Mexicans are left asking, who's fighting for them?
There are good tourists and bad tourists, but then there are some obnoxious ones. A Spanish man has joined this list. He visited a wildlife reservation in Kenya. Then he posted a video of himself pouring beer down an elephant's trunk. You heard that right. The Spanish man drank some local beer and then he gave the rest of it to an elephant. Unsurprisingly, his video has sparked anger on social media and left Kenya shocked. Now, several investigations have been launched against him, but this is not the first time a tourist has misbehaved with an animal and faced the music. Here's a report.
Recently, a Spanish man was in Kenya. He visited a wildlife reservation. And then he did something shocking. He gave an elephant a beer. He was drinking a local beer when he saw an elephant. So he poured the beer down the elephant's trunk. And he didn't stop here. He filmed it all. And then he posted it on Instagram. Soon, anger followed. Viewers on social media were outraged. Hundreds of people commented, many calling for the man's deportation. Since then, the posts have been pulled down, and several investigations have been launched against the man. But this is not an isolated case. A few months ago, a U.S. influencer stirred a firestorm of criticism in Australia.
Look at the mother. It's like, oh, it's chasing after her.
She snatched a baby wombat. Wombats are short-legged animals. They are native to Australia. The tourist grabbed the joey from near its mother at night. She ran back to her vehicle, recording a video, as the joey screamed, and its mother ran behind it, visibly panicking.
Mother, it's like, oh, it's chasing after her.
This incident outraged Australians. She faced everything from calls of deportation to death threats. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese suggested that she try this with a crocodile the next time.
To take a baby wombat from its mother and clearly causing distress from the mother is just an outrage. And you know, I suggest to this so-called influencer, maybe she might try some other Australian animals. Take a baby crocodile from its mother and see how you go there. Take another animal that can actually fight back rather than stealing a baby wombat from its mother. See how you go there.
In 2023, a tourist in the U.S. lifted a newborn bison calf. As a result, the calf was rejected by its herd and later had to be euthanized. In another case, a man was seen harassing bears. He charged towards them, forcing a bear to chase after him. Following such incidents, experts suggest that wildlife ministries, the world over, announce stricter rules, directing tour operators to enforce park rules, ensuring that visitors stay in designated areas. They also suggest improved signage across the wildlife parks and more awareness for tourists. But at the core of it, such cases are about the misbehavior of tourists in foreign countries, especially with animals who cannot speak up for themselves. And unfortunately, it is more common than you would think. Tourists often act irresponsibly. often to attain short-lived fame on social media. And in the process, they leave animals distressed, sometimes permanently, giving tourism a bad name.
And finally, it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. South Korea installs a holographic police officer to deter crime. In Indonesia, protesters clash with the police over wage inequality. In Saudi Arabia, heavy rain triggers flash floods. We're also taking you back in history. On this day in 1842, China signed the Treaty of Nanjing. It ended the First Opium War between China and Britain, forcing China to cede Hong Kong. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Join us for a special edition of Vantage from Tianjin this weekend.
안녕하세요. 서울중부경찰서입니다. 이 시스템은 실시간으로 공격 진행 중입니다.